Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. With the final two episodes of Stranger Things Season 4 coming out, the season has finally come to a close, so this is my review of Season 4 of Stranger Things. Before I tell you guys what I thought about this season of Stranger Things, let me know down in the comments, what did you think of this season of Stranger Things, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and Volume 2 specifically, just because that's what just came out. With that being said, I'm going to structure this video basically like I'm going to talk about Volume 1 first, talk about what I liked, what I disliked, and mostly what I liked because I really enjoyed this season. And then I'm going to talk about what I think of Volume 2 and specifically the finale and how I thought the show wrapped things up. With that said, I'm going to get started talking about Volume 1. And I thought that this, first off, for my expectations level, this was my most anticipated show this year, Season 4 of Stranger Things, because even though you have all these other shows coming out, like Lord of the Rings, Obi-Wan, The Boys and stuff, this is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I was just really excited to see where they continue the story after Season 3, so I was really excited to see it, and I thought Volume 1 of Stranger Things really delivered on my excitement. The show didn't miss a beat with the characters. All the characters are just as fun as before. They're really entertaining. They have really fun dynamic with each other. And some of the characters are just really interesting. And they also introduced some new characters, which I thought were really, really great. Right off the bat with episode 1, you have all these different things happening. Like you have Chrissy Cunningham, a new character, and you have Eddie, and both of them kind of start to have a bond a little bit. And as you get to the end of that episode, you have the scene where Chrissy just gets lifted up into the air, her bones start snapping, her eyeballs pop out, and you see Vecna, this villain who's the villain of the season, and he's just terrifying. And I love the fact that right off the bat, in the first episode, they set up this villain, and throughout the whole series, you just see that happening. This is the most intense that any season of Stranger Things has ever been, and it's just really fast-paced. And even though the episodes are really long, all of them are extremely entertaining. Now, there's a lot of different plot lines going on because our characters are divided up. So, for that reason, I think the season does have some issues because of it, because not all our characters are together. So, they keep cutting away from different plot lines. And I feel like some of them are more interesting than the others. The least interesting one is the one with the California crew. So whenever you cut to them, like Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle, I just wasn't that interested. Like, I did really enjoy it up until like episode 4. I think it had some good things. Like, whenever 11 was there, it was pretty good because 11 is an important character in the show. So whenever you cut to her, it's interesting. But like throughout the first 3 episodes, you have her getting bullied, which I don't think was a good idea because every time she got bullied, it just put a bad taste in my mouth, and she got humiliated at the roller rink. And when she hit Angela in the head with the roller skate thing, it obviously must have hurt, but she kind of had it coming because she deserved it. In my head, she deserved it. So I was a little iffy about that, but everything after that, I thought it was okay. Like, you have this whole government conspiracy thing going on. I did like the whole action scene in episode 4 where you have the cop protecting the kids from the military. I thought that was great. But everything after that, when they're going off on a road trip to Utah to meet Susie and try to get help to find where Eleven's at, all that was never interesting to me, and I would have much rather watched any of the other plot lines. With that being said, all the other ones I think are actually really entertaining. In Russia, you have Hopper, who's still alive, and you have this guard Enzo, who's a new character. I guess his actual name is Dmitri. So their relationship is really, really good. And whenever you see Murray and Joyce trying to look for them, I think it's actually really fun to watch because you have Murray, who's just this really funny character, and then you have Joyce, who's like really serious. So it's like an unlikely duo that actually ends up working really, really well. And even the whole plotline is just really interesting because you have Hopper trying to escape, and you have them trying to track down Hopper, and then you have Yuri in the mix, who just messes everything up. I think it's actually really fun. And even though it's like completely disconnected from everything else, I'd say it's more interesting than the stuff going on with the California people. And also, as you go into episode 7, that whole fight scene with the Demogorgon is absolutely awesome. So yeah, it has its issues and it is completely disconnected. But as a whole, I think it's actually really entertaining. And at the end of the day, I think it did pay off quite well in episode 7 at the end of volume 1. And then you get to 11, once she gets separated from the California crew, she goes with Paul Reiser's character to get her powers back, and you learn that Papa is still alive. I think all that stuff actually worked quite well. And I think going back, looking at her past, I think was really interesting. And throughout her past, you have this character, the Orderly, played by this really creepy dude who you feel like is a nice guy, but you feel like he's up to something. And throughout the whole thing, they set him up as this like important figure. And then you have the crew in Hawkins, our main characters in Hawkins, which is where the most interesting stuff happens, in my opinion. That's my favorite plot line of all of them, where you have Vecna, who's going around killing teenagers, killing high school students, and you have our main characters looking for who it is, and everyone thinks it's Eddie, our new character, who's awesome, by the way. He's my favorite of the new characters, aside from Vecna. He's just such a great character. Like, he's so much fun to watch. He's entertaining. He has a great relationship with everyone, and just his personality too, I think just works really, really well. So when everyone blames him and the Hellfire Club for all the murders, it's actually kind of sad because he's actually such a great guy. But yeah, Vecna's going around killing people, and then in episode 4, he gets to Max, and that whole scene, by the way, in episode 4 is absolutely amazing. I loved what they did with that whole scene where you have running up the hill playing in the background. It's just such a great, it looks great. Visually, it looks great. The sound, obviously the song is amazing, but just the sound design in the whole scene is incredible. And it's just really intense because you want Max to escape. And Max is just in general such a great character this season. In the previous seasons, I always liked her, but she was never one of my favorites. But this season, her character just elevated to the next level. I really like her character. Throughout this whole plotline and just the show in general, I think there's also like a really great production value on a visual level. The whole show looks great. I think the way it's shot is amazing. The cinematography, the colors, the color scheme and all that stuff, it looks really great. And as you go into episode 7, there's just so much great stuff that happens. That's episode 7 of this season is my favorite episode of this entire show. Like from season 1 all the way into season 4. It's my favorite episode. It's absolutely insane how much I love that episode. I really love it, and I can't believe how good it actually was. It's obviously the ending of volume 1, so you want something interesting to happen. So once you get to the end of that episode, when it's revealed that one is Vecna and he's Henry Creel, and that guy who is helping out 11 throughout the whole thing in the flashbacks is actually Vecna. It's really interesting, and you have him going on this whole speech, it just makes him a really compelling character, and the performance by the actor that plays him is amazing. Just such a great job of executing it, and the makeup and prosthetics on Vecna are also awesome. And just learning about his backstory was just really interesting. And this is where it all started. This is where when 11 fought him, I guess, and created the gate to the Upside Down, that's where everything came from. And I thought that was really well done. And you also learned that he was the one that killed everyone in the lab, and it wasn't 11. And throughout the whole show, we're led to believe that she was the one that did it. And when it's revealed that she wasn't, it's a huge payoff that she is actually innocent. She didn't do anything, which is why I just love that whole episode. It just makes you rethink everything that happened in the previous seasons, and in general, it just pays everything off really well and makes you want to see Volume 2 right away. And now I'm going to talk about Volume 2 and what I thought about it. And I'm going to say this. I think episodes 8 and 9, both of them were really, really great. Both are the episodes of Volume 2, and both of them add up to be 4 hours, which is just awesome. And the last episode is like almost 2.5 hours long, which is a length of a whole movie, and it does feel really epic. So I love that about it. But I don't think either of those episodes are as good as episode 7 was in Volume 1. I think that episode is the best episode of the whole show, and I still stand by that. I don't think episodes 8 or 9 change that, but I still think those 2 episodes are still really great, even though they're not as good as episode 7. Now, episode 8 is just setting up our characters for the journey they're going on, and it also focuses a little bit more on the California crew and 11. It doesn't focus as much as on Hawkins and Russia as you'd expect it to, because the previous episodes were like that. But here, it's a little more about 11 and California crew, and then the finale is about all of them culminating and paying off really, really well. And I think that for the most part, episode 8 did a really good job of setting up our characters and just setting it up in a way that feels like you're leading up to a great finale where you have everyone in Hawkins gearing up, getting weapons and all these things to fight Vecna. My favorite thing about this episode was probably everything with 11, because you have this awesome action sequence where all the military people show up to the base where 11 is getting her powers back, and when she's trying to escape, Papa lets her, and you have this really cool sequence where she brings down a helicopter, and it's one of the best action scenes of the whole season, and I thought it was really well done. It was really well executed, and it feels like one of those things from an action spy film, and I actually think it worked really well. And this episode is also where Papa dies, which I thought was actually pretty emotional. I thought it was really well executed. The scene itself was really well done, and the performances by the performance by Millie Bobby Brown when she reacts to what happens is actually really good, because you can buy that she's terrified of him, but she also kind of loves him because it is her dad still. So I thought that that was a really well done performance, and just in general a really good episode. And this episode also explains Vecna's plan really well, where he has to kill 4 people to create 4 gates into the Upside Down, so that way they can all converge, and the Upside Down can basically turn into the real world. And I think both of them kind of combine or something like that. That's basically his plan. And before that happens, they have to stop them. The Hawkins crew has to stop them. So they gather weapons, they gather all these things. And to fight Vecna, they get like a bunch of weapons and stuff from this place. And while they're there, they see Jason. And I thought that Jason, just in general, throughout the whole series, was a pretty good character. Honestly, I kind of wish that by the end he turned into a good guy. He didn't, but I honestly wish he did, because I think he was a really solid character. And even though he did kind of seem like a bad guy, I think just everything he did was because he was just upset over his girlfriend's death, which happened in the first episode. And I think if they just explained it to him a little bit more, he could have probably joined them and helped them out or something. But what they did with this character, I still thought was really good. And the fact that he bought into the fact that all these, the Hellfire Club is basically worshiping Satan or something, all that stuff, I thought, like, it was interesting the way he just bought all of it and just went with it. I also love the scene in episode 8 where Nancy at the beginning is still in the nightmare and Vecna's there. It's one of the scariest scenes, and Vecna just explains everything to her, and he tells her to deliver the message to 11, and I thought that that was a really good scene. It was just really scary, but also it explains a lot about Vecna's character. And then you get to the finale episode, and for the most part, I really love this episode. Again, I don't think it's as good as episode 7 was. I still think that's the best episode of the entire 4 seasons, but it's a really good finale, and it pays a lot of things off really, really well in a really satisfying manner. You have everyone from Russia, from Hawkins, and the California crew, you have all of them building up to this epic finale to fight Vecna, and it's really, really cool. And I know the Russia plotline is a little bit separate here. Here in this episode, that's the least interesting aspect for me, but I still really enjoyed what they did with it. As far as the California crew goes, one of my favorite things in these last 2 episodes is what they did with Will. When Will is talking to Mike about basically how he feels, but he tells her that's how 11 feels. So you can clearly tell that Will has feelings for Mike, and he just starts crying right after that. It was a really emotional scene. And then in episode 9, where he's talking to Jonathan, another scene that's just really emotional. And this scene actually got me teared up because of how emotional it was. You have these 2 brothers talking to each other that haven't talked to each other in a very long time. And I thought that that was just a beautiful scene. It was executed really well. And even though Jonathan and Will didn't have much to do in Volume 1, I thought in Volume 2, they actually had a really satisfying storyline. And it was actually really emotional. And everything after that is just epic. You have Vecna going inside Max's head while Max is at the Creel house. And it's really scary because you know that last time Max almost died, and it might actually happen again, and it kind of does, obviously, but I just thought it was executed so well. The whole scene where Vecna is in her head and she's hiding inside of a happy memory, but that doesn't help. Vecna still shows up, and it's terrifying. All of a sudden, 11 shows up, 11 joins in, helps Max out, and there's this awesome fight scene between Vecna and 11. At first, it feels like 11's winning, and she beats him once, but then Vecna comes back, and he takes both of them into his head, into his mind, and from there, it's just really hard to stop him because you're in his head. While that's happening in Russia, you have everything going on with the Demogorgons, and Hopper, Joyce, and Murray are fighting the Demogorgons. And because it's all a hive mind, I really like the way they use the hive mind concept here, because everything's a hive mind. If you hurt the Demogorgons in Russia, it hurts Vecna and it hurts everything going on in Hawkins as well. So I thought that that was really interesting. And that whole scene in Russia is actually really, really intense. I really enjoyed it. There's some really cool action. Murray gets this moment where he uses a flamethrower and burns everything, burns all the Demogorgons, which I thought was a really great moment. And then in the Upside Down, you have Steve, Nancy, and Robin going in to fight Vecna. And over here, you have them trapped. They cannot escape. So when Murray does burn all the Demogorgons, they do find a way to escape. They do find a way to go to Vecna. And this is where you have this awesome scene where they're burning Vecna, and Nancy has a shotgun and she's shooting him. And it's just such a great scene. It feels so satisfying because you finally see this guy that's murdered so many people is actually paying for it. And then on the other hand, in his head, you have 11 that, well, he's almost killing Max. Max is pretty much almost dead. And her bones start snapping. Her eyeballs haven't popped out yet. So she's not fully dead. But 11, she uses her powers. She finds a way to stop Vecna. But it doesn't end there, because while that's happening in the real world, in our actual side of the world, where you have Lucas and Jason fighting, because Jason shows up out of nowhere, and this fight was actually just as intense as all the other stuff. Even though it's just a random hand-to-hand fight, I still thought it was really satisfying when Lucas actually beat up Jason. And then he goes to Max and he realizes Max cannot see anything, her bones are snapped, she's pretty much almost dead. And then they lead us to believe that she might stay alive, but then she dies. And when she died, I was like, oh my god, so Vecna's plan succeeded, and all the portals are gonna, converge, and the real world is gonna suffer great consequences because of the Upside Down. But right before you see something happen, because I love the whole part where, like, all the gates are converging and they're, like, kind of combining, I guess. I love that whole scene. I was like, oh my god, are they seriously going to end this here and be like, our heroes lost and Vecna won? I would have thought that that was really, really cool, but they don't end it there. Here is where my biggest problem with this whole part was. I'm a little conflicted on this finale. I don't love it as much as, like, other people seem to. Now, I do like it more and more I think about it, because I do understand where they went with, like, the later parts of the episode. But right here, when 11 uses her powers to bring Max back to life, I thought that that was dumb. To me, that's like some the Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker type stuff, where they use the Force over there to bring people back to life. And over here, 11 uses her powers to bring Max back to life. And I don't know if she's really alive again, because her physical body is alive, but her mind, when later in the episode, when 11 goes inside her mind, she doesn't see anything. So it's like all her memories gone or something. Is she like brainwashed or something? I'm not sure how that works, but I guess she's back to life. So she brings her back to life, and the gates close, and they just cover it up as if it's some sort of earthquake. And I thought that that was fine. Like, okay, whatever. If that's what they're gonna do, whatever. I would have preferred it if they just ended it there and been like, yeah, Vecna won, and we're gonna have to see what happens in season 5. I think that would have been better. But here, when Max is kind of back to life, I thought it was fine. Whatever. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't the best thing for me. But of course, I have to talk about what is probably the most emotional scene this entire season, is the scene where Eddie dies. To me, Eddie is the best new character of all the main characters. Not Vecna. Vecna is the villain. But aside from him, he's my favorite character of all the new characters. So watching Eddie die was really hard for me. It was really emotional, because you have this guy that's just genuinely really nice, a really good person, and people think he's a murderer and he just dies. I thought that that was actually a really sad scene. And he also dies a hero. He dies trying to save Dustin. And I thought that that was just such a beautiful scene. When he's talking to Dustin, it was such an emotional scene. It made me cry. I was bawling my eyes out. It was really sad. But the way it was executed, I thought it was just such a beautiful scene. It was really well done. And it's, again, I think it's the most emotional scene of the entire season. It was really, really good. It was really good. And honestly, it made me really sad because throughout the whole season, you see this guy that's running away from everything, but here he sacrifices his own life to save Dustin, and it's an amazing scene. And after all that ends, you basically have a whole epilogue where you see the consequences of what just happened. Everyone is leaving Hawkins, and you have Eleven, Mike, Jonathan, and Argyle come back to Hawkins, and Will too, obviously, and they meet their family and all that stuff, and you have our characters that just interact with each other, and seeing all that happen was actually really cool. And when Jonathan and Nancy met, I honestly kind of felt bad for Steve because throughout this whole season, Steve and Nancy, it felt like they were kind of rekindling again. I thought they were going to be in a relationship again, but I guess not. I don't think that's going to happen because Jonathan's back, but maybe there's a chance in season 5. But I always preferred Steve and Nancy over Jonathan and Nancy, but honestly, I don't care because I think Jonathan's just as great as Steve is. I just wish Jonathan got more to do this season. And then you have Steve, Dustin, and Robin who go to help out the people that, were suffering consequences because of the earthquakes. And while they're there, you have Robin that finally meets her crush. And I thought that was such a great moment. And while they're talking, it was just really good. I thought that like their relationship, because that's been set up throughout the whole thing, and when you get to this final episode they actually meet, they start talking. I thought that was really good. And my favorite moment of the epilogue is where Dustin talks to Eddie's uncle, because Eddie died saving Dustin, and the way Dustin talks about Eddie to his uncle, it was a really sad scene. It got me emotional. When I was watching the scene, I started crying just like I did when Eddie died, and it just reminded me of that. Just such a great character Eddie is, and when he died, his uncle was really sad too. And it's just the way Dustin talks about it, as if he's a hero. He was a hero. He was not a criminal. He did not kill people, and I love the fact that you get this moment with his uncle that's actually really satisfying. And then you have all our characters from Russia that come back, Hopper and Joyce, and they meet the kids and all that stuff, which was all really great. But another moment that I really loved here was when Will tells Mike that he can still feel Vecna, that Vecna is still alive. And I loved that. To me, my favorite thing about this season was probably Vecna. He's just one of my favorite villains. He is the best villain this show has ever had. And I was really excited when he said that Vecna is still alive, because I didn't want Vecna to die. I was hoping he's the big bad of season 5, and I guess the Mind Flayer could be too, but from what we learned this episode, Vecna created the Mind Flayer. So the episode basically ends with them realizing that there's snow, but when they go to the place where it's all coming from, it's not actually snow. I think it's actually a bunch of gates to the Upside Down, and it ends in a really epic way. And I cannot wait for season 5. I genuinely cannot wait. This season was amazing, even though I do have some conflicting feelings about the way it ended. I think overall, because you get to this end scene where it does kind of undo everything, because you do have the gates open, and Will does say that Vecna is still alive, and you do have a cliffhanger ending. One of my predictions was that the heroes are going to lose, and we're going to have a cliffhanger ending. And I guess 50% of that was true, because our heroes kind of did win, but there's still a cliffhanger ending because you have the gates that are still open. And I thought that scene was awesome. That just made me really happy, and I'm really excited to see how they continue all of this in season 5. My biggest gripe with this finale is probably that, the ending, sure, but my biggest gripe is that the Duffer Brothers teased a big body count, so like a bunch of people are gonna die, but not a bunch of people died. I mean, out of the main characters, like 3 people did. Jason died because the gate was opening and stuff. I was honestly hoping that Jason was still alive, but he died, whatever. And Jason died. I guess Max kind of died because her memories are not there and stuff. Eddie died and Papa died. And that's not a lot of people. That's like 3 actual deaths, and Max, who didn't die, she came back to life. So I was hoping more people died, not because I want people to die. That's not what I mean. It's just that the show has so many characters now that at this point you need to start killing off people for it to not feel like it's too many characters. And this season, one of my biggest gripes is that they divided up the characters, and some of the characters are not as interesting because you don't get enough time with them. I am a little disappointed by that, but with that being said, I think as a whole, the season was really great. And the deaths that we did get were actually really well done and really emotional. So as a whole, this season, I wouldn't say that's the best season right now. I think I don't need to give it time just because of the way I feel about the ending. I'm a little conflicted about it, but I think it's definitely up there. I think it's definitely up there with season one, and I'm really interested in seeing if on rewatch I do prefer it more than season one. Right now, I'm not sure. It might be my favorite season, but I'm not ready to say that yet. As far as the score goes, I think I'm gonna give the season of Stranger Things an A. I would have given it an A plus if I liked the ending a little bit more, but it is overall still really great. I thoroughly enjoyed this season of Stranger Things, and it might be my favorite. I am gonna do a ranking of the seasons probably soon, so be sure to check that out when it comes out. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Let me know down in the comments, what did you think of this season of Stranger Things? If you enjoyed my review, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.